Hi everyone, I thought I would make a quick video to just review how to use Hypothesis since I know it's been a few weeks since we've used it. So I'll just review that again and then we'll have a recap on the difference between scholarly sources and non-scholarly sources because I know there were a few questions about that during the last essay that we wrote. So I am in our week 8 module and I'm going to scroll down to see the readings. So you can tell that these are hypothesis readings from this globe icon. So we'll go ahead and click on the first one called Do We Need Zoos? And it usually takes a couple seconds to upload. So here we have the article. And if you want to minimize this right part of the screen, you can just click on this arrow, and that way it's easier to read through the article. You can also change the size if you prefer. Okay, so this is an article from The Atlantic, which is an online publication. We see that up here. The date, June 2nd, 2016. And this is about an incident that happened. I'm not sure if you'll remember this, but it was kind of a sad, well actually a very sad incident where one of the gorillas in the zoos had to be killed because a little toddler had fallen into the enclosure at the zoo. It was quite jarring. If you search on YouTube, you can see the video if you want to, but he fell into the enclosure and he was not hurt. However, the zookeepers obviously wanted to make sure that the little boy would be okay and ended up having to shoot the gorilla, or at least they felt they had to shoot the gorilla. So oftentimes when bad things happen, people look for, someone to blame, because I think that's human nature. It helps us feel better if we can figure out whose fault it was, right? So here we see it reads, someone at the Cincinnati Zoo caught much of what happened on video. And immediately afterward, people blamed the mother. Why wasn't she watching her son? And the zoo director. Was there no other option? So let's say you wanted to make a note here. You could just highlight the text and click this annotate icon and type in whatever comes to mind, whether you agree with the decision of the zoo, whether you disagree, whether it inspires questions. Type in those questions. The idea is to interact with the text and to engage with the text, and that will help you to better process the information. So obviously when you're taking the time to think about what you're reading, you're not going to be skimming through the article. When you're annotating, you're really taking your time, you're slowing down, and you're looking at every sentence, and you're just trying to digest everything and also just write out whatever comes to mind. Okay, so I'm just going to hide this back. And then as you guys annotate, I definitely encourage you to go through and see what all of your peers have commented on. I think that's what I like about using this software, is that you can learn from each other and see how your peers reacted to the same information. Perhaps someone thought of something that you didn't think of, or perhaps someone pointed something out that you wouldn't have thought of. So I like the idea of sharing your reactions. Okay, so I'm going to close this out and move on to another screen. So this is from our Montgomery College Library database, and it's just a quick handout on scholarly versus popular sources. So you may have heard me refer to this as academic sources versus non-academic sources. So one of the main differences between the two is the audience, and you've heard me talk a lot about audience. A scholarly work is generally for a scholarly audience, right? It's work that's published by and for experts. And one way to quickly tell that a piece of work is scholarly is that they will almost always include some kind of bibliography or footnotes, and most definitely will include the author's name and academic credentials. So if we're reading an article from the American Academy of Pediatrics, you will surely see the credentials of the author or authors, and also extensive footnotes referencing other studies. They're also usually longer and more dense, so that's something to keep in mind as you're doing your research, since you do need to have 5 scholarly articles. Just know that it will take you time to sift through those articles, to read through those articles, to annotate them, and to kind of just organize your notes and your thoughts so that when you get to the drafting stage, you'll have an easier time of just sifting through all the information. So popular sources or non-academic sources are also fine to use for your research paper. These include popular magazines such as The Atlantic, which is what we just looked at, the article about the zoo. Newspapers, Opposing Viewpoints, CQ Researcher, these are some databases in our library system that are really good sources. And they're, like I said, they're fine to use them, but you want to have a good mix. Some scholarly sources and some popular sources. Also, to quickly make a note about primary versus secondary research, this is important to distinguish. Primary research presents original research methods for finding or findings for the first time. So if you're a researcher at NIH and you're conducting some lab experiments and you publish the results of those experiments and they get published in a journal, a medical journal, let's say the Journal of the American Medical Association, that would be an example of primary research, right? Because it's firsthand research. Also, newspaper articles written by journalists, these are primary sources, right? This is firsthand information that the journalist obtained by being an eyewitness. That would be a primary source. Secondary research, on the other hand, does not present new material. Whoops. Sorry about that. Okay. Now I lost my file. But just to continue, secondary research does not present brand new research that was obtained firsthand from the writer. So let's say we're talking about that Journal of American Medical Association article that was published by the NIH researcher. And let's say you are working for the Washington Post and you were assigned to read through that article and to extract the main findings and present it in a more audience-friendly format for the general public. In that case, that would be a secondary source, right? Because you are using a source that was already published by someone else and presenting the information. So I hope that helps you to remember the difference between the two. And if you have any questions as we proceed and as you start looking for more sources, then just let me know. Thanks.